I remember the conference in 1999. I don't remember much about the conference, but I remember our conversations because we talked about a certain tropical bleaching that had occurred the previous year during the strongest El Nino that had ever been recorded. That remained the strongest El Nino until 2016. It's still the second strongest. The ocean was very warm. There was a lot of bleaching all around the world. And there are still reefs in the Indian Ocean that are completely dead because they were killed during that bleaching. And they're too far from other reefs to have yet been recolonized. We were concerned about what was happening. But we were concerned about what was happening, but we were also optimistic because something that conspicuous, something that worldwide would be a wake-up call, and people would realize we had to, and climate change. And so we were optimistic. But the keynote speaker at that conference, Odemeyer, used the word triage in his talk. And triage is a word you use to describe what medical personnel have to do on a battlefield. You have to choose which injured person to save. And he said, and this is a direct quote from his paper, he said that we cannot go back to the reefs of 1950. They're gone. We're going to have something different in the future. And we've got to work to try and be sure that that something includes something resembling reefs. It was a very pessimistic talk. Nevertheless, those conversations meant that we left the conference inspired, and many of us began talking about coral reefs because we believed that if we explained to people what was happening, they would understand and they would care, and we would begin to address these environmental issues. That was in 1999. And you know, it made no difference. We talked impassionedly about coral reefs. We explained the complexity of bleaching. We illustrated with marvelous videos what was happening. They didn't make any difference. And I wondered for a long time why. And then one day it dawned on me. It dawned on me after this slide, because I forgot this slide was there. This is a direct quote from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And when a science committee uses phrases like losses of more than 99%, you know they're talking about something very serious. Mostly, people just saw this as unfortunate environmental news. It doesn't affect us. And we continue with our lives. In 2022, the Great Barrier Reef bleached for the fourth time since 2016, only the sixth time ever. We're really in a different world to the world we used to be in. Coral reefs around the world have now lost 50% of the amount of living coral that they had in 1970. It's like losing half the trees on the planet. Half the trees. And most people don't care. Oh, they care. Oh, it's so sad. It's really too bad for the reefs. but they don't really care. And most of the people who've seen a coral reef didn't understand what it was. So it meant nothing to them. And yet we think we know about coral reefs because we're surrounded by lovely, beautiful images of them. These wonderfully complicated places. These colorful, dynamic places. We think we know what they are, but we don't, because we've never seen one. You can even see coral reefs on Netflix, and this is incidentally quite a good video. But that isn't the same as understanding and implicitly feeling what a coral reef is. And so what I'm going to do today is talk about how amazing they are. And in that way suggest that they're worth caring about. And I'm going to do this by telling you a whole bunch of simple stories. And the first one concerns this little guy, who looks quite cute close up. But he's actually a trivial little fish. He's barely 10 centimeters long. He's very skinny. He's shorter than his name.
Very impressive.
But a lady called Anne Burnell, back in the early 80s, discovered that if she looked very carefully at pipefishes, she could tell them apart because the marks on their heads were different. And so she could recognize individuals, which meant she could go to a place on a reef day after day, follow the same fish around, and find out what they were doing. And she wanted to study their social behavior because pipefish, like their cousins, seahorses, are fish in which the male carries the eggs in a pouch. So the male does all the parental care, and she wanted to see what their social life was like. This is a pair of pipefish. You don't usually see them together because they're solitary animals. But this is a female in front and a male behind. The male is a bit fatter than the female because he's got his pouch full of eggs. Like I say, they're drab little things. The average tourist wouldn't even notice them. And yet they're on reefs all around the world. Not this species, but pipefish. So they're solitary. They move around over relatively small spaces during the day. But Anne discovered, and she discovered this because she was willing to get up in the dark, climb into a wetsuit, get out on the reef and get in the water before the sun came up, because they do a daily greeting ceremony just after sunrise. She discovered that every morning, particular females would visit particular males, and then they would do a behavior where they nodded their heads back and forth, and then they'd go about their day. And then the next morning they would do the same thing. And discovered that they were breeding for about 7 months of the year. And that when they were breeding, courtship would follow that breeding ceremony. The courtship would get more and more elaborate. Eventually they would get very close to one another, and then they would spawn, and the female would place her eggs into the male's pouch. 200 to 300 eggs. And the male would carry them for 10 to 12 days. And during those 10 to 12 days, the female would visit him every morning. It's sort of like checking in, having a cup of coffee. How are you? See you later. The female has a wonderful life. The males, they're looking after the eggs. We have followed these fish for a year and a half through 2 breeding seasons. The male and the female were faithful. At the end of the male's carrying of 1 clutch of eggs, as the eggs hatch, that day or the next day, the breeding ceremony would turn into courtship. And then the male would have another clutch of eggs for another 12 days. is a wonderful example of efficient use of resources by the female. It's also a very trivial story for a trivial little fish, but I tell it to you because who would imagine that a fish that small, that drab, that insignificant would have a story that complicated to tell? That it would have mate recognition, that they would visit each other regularly. I'm going to stop talking about fish, but I'll come back to fish later. I want to talk about reefs themselves. And I've got the map of the Mesoamerican barrier reef here just to remind you that it's the biggest development of reef in the Caribbean. And all of that development is built by the organisms, the corals and other creatures that produce skeletons out of calcium carbonate. The amazing thing is that all around the world we have these immense reefs being built by these tiny creatures. That was photographed in Pemba Island, which is just off Tanzania. All that coral laid out, wonderful for capturing the maximum amount of light, but it's also beautiful to look at. We'll look at this one much, much closer. This is one of the boulder corals. You're looking at it very close up. Each of those little hills is the skeleton of a single polyp. And of course, it's daytime, so the polyps are retracted. We get the impression there's no soft tissue there. It's all tucked down inside. But look at the regularity. It's just regular as a honeycomb. It's built that way. That's the way they do it. Or this one, which is a pine tree, a copra close up. Every one of those little cups is the home of a single polyp. And they're arranged in a very regular way around each of those spines. And so the shape of the colony is built by the way the animals grow. And then the different colonies together produce this marvelously complicated place that we call a coral reef. This is taken right here in Mexico, near Acuáticos, probably 15 years ago. The boulder coral in the foreground with those wonderful furrows, they were fish that lived their lives, swimming back and forth in that maze. Just occasionally swimming over a wall to the next little channel. Quite happy. There are other fish that live on the branching and probably line. You don't find them anywhere else. And then, of course, there are other fish that live in the shadows underneath. The result of all the complex architecture of the corals creates a world with a multitude of different kinds of places for different kinds of organisms to live in. As a consequence, we have a coral reef as the richest ecosystem in the ocean, far and away the richest ecosystem in the ocean, far more species. If you go to an even wider scale, they've got another kind of beauty. This is Aitutaki. It's north of New Zealand in the South Pacific, surrounded by more than 4,000 meters deep, and then it's at sea level. This is what we call an almost atoll, because the island in the north of it, this one here, is near the basalt. That is the last remnant of the volcanic island that this flew around. And in 10,000 years, that will be eroded away, and we'll have a true atoll. All the rest of that is built by coral and other carbonate-forming creatures. If you're really rich, you can, I didn't want to do that. If you're really rich, you can go and have a vacation on this island. It's apparently very exclusive. I've never been there. I'm not really rich. You got to be really rich to go there. give you a sense of the stack that's 12 kilometers across. Seeing it, thinking about it, you can understand why the ancient mariners were terrified of coral reefs. Could you be sailing along in the open ocean with plenty of yarn beneath your keel, and in the space of half a kilometer, you would be iron dry, shipwrecked, probably doomed. The Great Barrier Reef is big enough that it doesn't fit on a satellite image. It starts down here at the bottom end where the Tropic of Capricorn runs across. It extends all the way up the Queensland coast, off the screen to the tip of Australia. In places, it's 300 kilometers wide. Most of the reefs are at least 50 kilometers from shore. Only the reefs on the outer edge have really deep water beside them on the outside edge, because they're all sitting on the continent itself in about 40 to 50 meters of water. Pictures of the Great Barrier Reef are stunning in all sorts of ways. This one shows lots and lots of shallow habitat. All of this is restricted by corals and other organisms, except for the coast of Australia and a couple of islands in the background. All of it is built by the organisms that live there. Here, Hook and Hardy Reef, I forget which is which. They're always photographed because they're always side by side, and the reason people photograph them is because of this amazing channel between them. It looks like an engineer built it. It didn't, it's natural. It's another example of what you can see on coral reefs. And I want to come back to this map to remind you that the Tropic of Capricorn is down here, and there's a group of reefs at the bottom of the barrier reef called the Capricorn Group. It's about 7 or 8 reefs. They're halfway across the continental shelf from the coast to the edge. They're sitting in about 40 meters of water. This one here is Heron Reef with Heron Island. Many tourists to Australia will see the barrier reef by going to Heron Island if they don't go further north. And so all of this you see here is submerged at high tide. It's just the island is left with high tide. Water across these rubble banks would be 2 to 3 meters high at tonnage. And I know one thing rather well because I worked there for many, many years when I worked in Australia. And the last time I saw it, in fact, was in 2008. We had a workshop on Heron Island. We'll be coming here at a helicopter and visit. And it was nice to see it again, because I had not seen it for a long time. We landed on one of the rubble banks, but they didn't come across in the boat, so we didn't have to swim. But I didn't show you One Tree Reef just to reminisce about my life in the past. I wanted to talk about how these reefs developed, because there's a belief out there that reefs grow very, very slowly, that they're millions and millions of years old. And we actually know a lot about how One Tree Reef grew. And it's a very different story to that. If you're going to understand the building of this reef, you have to understand sea level changes, sea level rise, sea level fall. You have to understand glacial, interglacial cycles. Because when the glaciers were building up in North America and in Europe, they were sucking water up onto the land and sea level fell. And then when the glaciers receded, sea level rose. You also have to understand the drift in Australia towards Southeast Asia. It's still going on. It's been going on for a long time. It goes at about a centimeter a year. There was a time when this part of Australia was too far south for coral reefs to grow. In fact, if you go back 2 million years, which is the beginning of the Pleistocene, This place was high and dry because sea level was lower than the continental shelf. And it was also too far south. So we know that One Tree Reef is not 2 million years old. In fact, between 2 million and 20,000 years ago, there were about 20 interglacial cycles. The glaciers advanced, sea level fell, the glaciers retreated, sea level rose. Each time, sea level fluctuated about 120 meters all around the world. And the shelf is only 40 meters deep today. So every time you had glaciers in North America, this was all dry land. 20,000 years ago was the last glacier maximum. Every sea level has been going up to This is a graph put together by geologists of the change in sea level since 20,000 years ago. So we got the last glacier maximum glacier is 21,000 years ago. And notice sea level minus 120 meters below present day levels. It's risen ever since then, and it's sometimes rising rapidly and sometimes more gently, but it's not until about 7,000 years ago that it reached present day levels. It's now starting to go up again because we're busy melting ice all over the planet. But this has a lot to do with the evolution of One Tree Reef. Just 20,000 years ago, there was no reef. There may have been reef previously, 100,000 years previously, but there was no reef 20,000 years ago because it had been high and dry for a long time. It was a hill. There had been trees and forests and grasslands and aborigines hunting down Caribbean. 10,000 years ago, the seas reached the base of the hill. There was still no reef. It was too turbid, too much sediment in the water for any corals to grow. About 8,000 years ago, sea level was halfway up the hill, and you start getting the formation of coral. And the coral tends to grow upward as pinnacles because sea level was rising so fast that the corals were growing upward, trying to catch up. The sea level reached the surface to the present level at about 7,000 years ago. It took another 1,000 years for the coral to reach the surface. And at that point, it started to fill in the lagoon with erosion and other kinds of changes. And so it was about another 2,000 years we got to the point where it looks like it is today. So if you want to say how old is One Tree Reef, you can reflect on what people were doing at those times in the past. I know that Egyptians did get a bit of a head start on the Maya, and they built their pyramids 4,000 years ago. The One Tree was built over a period of 4,000 years, from 8,000 years ago to 4,000 years ago. So one way of looking at it is how old is One Tree Reef? Well, when it was finished being built, it's still already in the Great Pyramid. And that is typical for coral reefs. They are much shorter lived than we can believe. There's a lot of change. They get destroyed, they come back in. What we're doing now is probably doing a particularly good job of destroying. I want to turn back to the animals. And I want to talk about larvae. Reefs are there. There's lots of space in the ocean between reefs. And yet, Virtually only organisms that live on reefs produce offspring which spend the early part of their lives out in the plankton, out in the open ocean. And why on earth would they do that? Because you'd think it would make sense to keep them at home where there's a place to live, a reef. No, send out to the ocean and hope that they find a reef at the end of larval life. We don't know a lot about the larval lives of reef creatures, but what we do know is fascinating. For corals, for example, one of the things we know about corals, see if I can make it work. Yeah, I think not bad. I had a lovely video of the coral spawning. You'll have to take my word for it. These little bundles here are all rising up to the surface. Each one of those is a bundle of eggs and sperm in a single pod. They can't fertilize each other. But when they get to the surface, there you go. Thank you. Go ahead. Oops. Now forget it. It's okay. I've got a longer video later. I hope it works, because that'll be a real problem. When they get to the surface, those bundles break apart, and the sperm from one bundle can fertilize eggs from another bundle. The interesting thing about corals is that they spawn synchronously. On the Great Barrier Reef, the synchrony is particularly sharp. The great majority of species spawn on the same couple of nights of the year. It's so precise that the dive industry sets up special, super expensive night dives so people can see that the corals spawn. After they spawn, the eggs are fertilized, they drift out to sea. The eggs feed on their yolk, the yolk feed, the larvae feed on their yolk, they don't feed on other vegetables. And eventually they return to the reef, and we know rather little about that larval life of corals. Fortunately, corals are very good at asexual reproduction. When it comes to the fish, we know a lot more about their larval lives, and in some ways their larval lives are more interesting because they feed on other plankton. One of the things that we found is they come in a huge array of shapes and sizes where they look like nothing related to what they're going to turn into when you get to the reef. They're quite crazy looking creatures. Look at this one. Completely transparent, flat. It's curled up with its skin in the center, probably a defensive posture. This is photographed out in the field, not by me. That's a neo larvae. It will turn into something that is very different in appearance to that. Look at this beautiful guy with enormously enlarged pectoral fins, which he periodically puts out like that big halo, which makes it very difficult for him to be eaten. You have to have a big mouth to get around that rather prickly looking thing. Or this one here, a surgeon fish. This was photographed off Florida. It's the lutein. But all of the surgeon fish larvae look a lot like this. They're practically translucent in the back half. You can count the ribs and the vertebrae. The front half is very silvery. They're quite large as larvae go. And we know a lot about the larval lives of surgeon fishes, partly because of the work Jack Randall. I'm not going to talk about luteins, I'm going to talk about nemini, a common surgeon fish throughout the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. And in the 1950s, Jack Randall, who's a famous fish biologist, now no longer with us, did his PhD on the life cycle of the manini. And these are the things he found about it. They spawn monthly. They aggregated the reef edge. They rise up into the water column in groups, shedding eggs and sperm at the top. The eggs are fertilized in mid-water. They hatch in 2 to 3 days out in the ocean. And then they begin their life drifting in the ocean because they're too small to swim with any capacity at all. But they gradually grow and become more capable swimmers. And 10 to 12 weeks later, they swim into a reef at high tide at night. And they choose shallow places to live in, quite particular habitat. Now that story that Jack put together raises all sorts of questions. Why did they do it? Why did they send them all out into the open ocean? While they're drifting out there, how do they even know how to find a coral reef to get home? And in the beginning, people assumed that they accidentally bumped into coral reefs and that's how they got home. And lots of them, of course, wouldn't get home. But it's become apparent that they are much more capable than that. They have marvelous swimming ability, and they have other things as well. And I wanted to show you their swimming ability by comparing the swimming of a surgeonfish to the swimming of Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps got the world record in the 100-meter butterfly in 2009. He held it for 10 years. It was finally taken away from him in 2019 by somebody who managed to do it in half a second less. That's a phenomenal speed. Michael's 193 centimeters tall, so to swim 100 meters at that speed meant he was swimming just over 1 body length a second. And that is fast. I can't swim that fast. I suspect none of you can swim that fast. That's really fast, right? So here's what a surgeonfish can do. Put a surgeonfish in a flume with a flow of water through it. You can get them swimming at 5.5 body lengths a second. And they'll keep swimming at 5.5 body lengths a second for 194 hours without feeding before they give up. That's a 94-kilometer swim. So I think you compare the two. Looks pretty good, right? But maybe that's not really a good comparison because Michael was swimming at his burst speed. He was swimming at the fastest he possibly could swim. Crank up the flow in the flume and see how fast the surgeonfish can swim. They can do 24 body lengths a second. It can hold that speed for 180 seconds, and in the course of that, it'll swim over 100 meters. Now, it's not doing the butterfly. That's the only difference. But I think the swimming capacity is absolutely incredible. This is one of the largest surgeonfish larvae. Most of them are about 2.5 centimeters. This one's obviously bigger. That's what it looks like when it grows up. It's not just being able to swim that enables them to get back to a reef. How do they know what a reef is? How do they find a reef? It turns out they can smell reefs and swim towards them. They can hear reefs and swim towards them. They actively swim in the night. I keep stressing that because it's not a case of just accidentally drifting in onto the fire. They actively swim in. They are going to a place they need to be. They choose very specific places to settle. But we don't really understand any of this. And people have been working early juvenile ecology of reef fishes for 30 or 40 years now. We still don't really understand how this works. Especially for fish like searching fishes that left the reef as unfertilized eggs. How the hell do they know what the reef is? How do they know what it smells like? How do they know they're supposed to live there when they finish water life? Now, we can all be learned and scientific and say this is the power of evolution, this is a wonderful example of innate behavior, and that's all true. But that doesn't explain it. How the hell do they do it? We don't know. And all reef creatures have this capacity to get back to a reef. How do they know they're supposed to go there? There's a puzzle that I was puzzling over when I was a graduate student. I'm still puzzling over it. I don't think we'll ever know. Incidentally, you remember Nemo? Nemo got stolen or something, and then he escaped and he had to find his way home. It turns out the real Nemo sometimes not only gets back to a reef, but gets back to the anemone within a few meters of where it started its life. I like the surgeon fishes. The anemone fishes lay their eggs at the base of the anemone. So at the moment of hatching, they probably have the chance to smell what an anemone smells like, to see what an anemone looks like, and then they're whisked out into the open ocean till they 10-day line of life. And then they come back. So maybe they do know where they're trying to get to. But nevertheless, they can actually get home, which says something rather nice. That's enough about larvae. Got a very short story with one slide. Something different. A grouper and a moray swimming side by side. You see it occasionally. Different species of leapers, different species of eel. Sometimes other creatures get in on the act. Why are they doing that? It's not an accident. They're hunting together. Not only are they hunting together, but the grouper communicates with the eel. Eels typically in the daytime are in a crevice in the rock with their head poking out of there, going, the grouper comes up and with a particular set of head nodding maneuvers signals to the eel. Maybe he makes these sounds as well. He says, I'm hungry, let's go hunting. And the eel, if the eel is inclined to go hunting, responds by coming out of that crevice and they go off hunting together. And it's been proved that they do better. They catch more food by hunting together. Because the eel can catch the fish that run into a crevice in the reef, and the grouper can catch the fish that are chased out of the reef when the eel goes inside. They don't share their food, but between the two of them, they catch more food by hunting together. It's a wonderful example of species cooperating. But you all say, that's just two fish. Why shouldn't they communicate with each other? Now, I don't know about you, are far more distantly related to each other than I am to my cat. They're probably more distantly related to each other than you are to a frog. And when was the last night they tried to talk intelligently to a frog? I don't know how this happens. Does every grouper have to learn the language? Or does it know the language instinctively? And if it knows it instinctively, how is that done? People are all very busy talking about DNA and how marvelous it is, but how does it control behavior like communication with a other species? That's enough about that story. Here's a different story. How many of you remember this band? They played really funky music. There was a strange place sentient creatures of many different species gathered together, eating and drinking and carrying on. They were having fun. It was where Luke Skywalker first met Obi-Wan Kenobi. Remember? You don't have to go to a galaxy far, far away. You go to a reef and you find a cleaning station. A cleaning station is not like a bar. The cleaning station is a bit more like a hairdressing salon. The cleaner fish sets up the cleaning station, and then other fish, the client species, come to have their parasites treated. But you can watch what's happening at a cleaning station any day of the week. They're open 7 days a week, sun up to sundown. Here's a cleaner cleaning the gills of a batfish. But you just have to look at the color of those gills to know how delicate they probably are. And yet that fish has laced its bill cover to allow the cleaner to go inside and remove parasites. Here's a pair of cleaners cleaning up client. Look at the way the client is posing. With all its fins raised, it's got its curriculum up so they can get into the gills. It's got its mouth open so they can go into the mouth. Here's a idea with a group of Amini, and a couple of those Amini have got their gills open already, waiting patiently for him to come by. And there's a kind how to the amalgam sweet lip, which would be quite capable of swallowing it. Incidentally, cleaners taste just fine, and they're not poisonous. They don't be. In fact, there's been a lot of work done by various people on cleaning biology, on the social behavior of a cleaning station, ethic biology into cleaning fishes. And in the Pacific, with the most specialized cleaners, a single cleaner in the course of a day at an active station can clean 2,000 clients of 150 different species. So we're talking here about a social interaction involving 150 species that know that you're not supposed to eat this guy, and that if you go there, he will clean you. And the cleaner has to know he can slip up to any of those 150 species who have been get clean divers to the clients queue up to be cleaned, and they wait patiently and they don't fight with each other. Now, when it was first described in 1960, it was described fairly simply as something with obvious benefits. Benefits to the cleaner that brought food, benefits to the host which got clean, mutual benefits. This makes sense. Evolution can work with that. It's obvious this is an evolutionary confluence to create this kind of behavior. It's what we call reciprocal altruism. The fact that we have a fancy word for it doesn't mean we understand it. Induces behavior. And every individual cleaner, just imagine, on its first day of cleaning, it has to know it can swim up to that weak fish and dance around in front of its mouth with that beak. In fact, as people have studied cleaning biology in detail, they discovered it's even more difficult to understand than they thought it was. Because these cleaners are not pure, angelic, altruistic creatures. They have favorites. Remember I said to the clients, queue up, waiting to be cleaned? But when the favorite swings by, the cleaner ignores the queue and goes and cleans together. And the queue waits patiently. They're trying doing that if you're waiting to get into a nightclub and there's a lineup and somebody jumps in front of the queue. Green is their favorite. Furthermore, cleaners cheat. It turns out that cleaners actually prefer fish flesh to eating parasites. And so every now and then they take a bite out of the host. How on earth does this social behavior develop in the first place and then persist? It's a mystery. Sure, it's evolutionary. Sure, it's instinctive behavior. But do we really understand what it is? No. And it's marvelous to know that it exists for cultures, because it shows that the species can cooperate with each other in complicated ways.